Picture this. A woman sits on a man's back like a chair while addressing a room full of terrified men. The year is 1902. The woman is the most powerful person in the region. And this is just the beginning of the most scandalous story in Kenyan history. Her name was Wangu wa Makeri, and what she did was unthinkable, unforgivable, and absolutely unforgettable. Let me take you back to 1856, to the rolling hills of Muranga, where a girl named Wangu was born into a world that told her she was worth nothing more than her ability to tend crops and bear children. She had no education, no prospects, just calloused hands, and a spirit that refused to be broken. Working her parents' farm, she met Makeri Wambogo, a decent man who gave her 6 children and a simple life. But Wangu was never meant for simple. Everything changed the day Paramount Chief Karuri wa Gakure rode into their village. This wasn't just any man, this was a legend with over 60 wives, a powerhouse who controlled Fort Hall and commanded respect from both the Kikuyu and the British colonizers. When he needed a place to rest, he chose Makeri's humble home. And that's when Wangu began her daily ritual. Every morning, she would appear at the chief's door with fresh milk, sour milk, meat, and food. Every morning, their eyes would meet a little longer. Every morning, the tension grew thicker. Here was a woman who had never owned anything, bringing sustenance to the most powerful man in the region. But what she was really feeding was a hunger that would consume them both. The affair was inevitable, dangerous, absolutely forbidden. But Wangu had no idea that this very romance would give her something no African woman had ever possessed. When Makeri Wambogo discovered his wife's betrayal, the world should have ended for Wangu. In any other story, she would have been cast out, beaten, or worse. Instead, something extraordinary happened. Chief Gakure, desperate to silence the cuckolded husband, offered Makeri the position of headman, essentially a chief under his command. It was a position of power, prestige, and profit. Makeri looked at the offer and said no. He was a wealthy man with livestock to tend. He had no interest in politics or British taxation schemes. He wanted nothing to do with the colonial administration. Then Gakure did something that sent shockwaves through the entire region. He turned to Wangu and said, "What about you?" In 1902, when women couldn't vote, couldn't own property, couldn't even speak in most meetings, Wangu wa Makeri became the first and only female Kikuyu leader during the entire British colonial period. What she did next was unthinkable. Power changes people, but what it did to Wangu was something else entirely. The British had implemented a brutal taxation system, and local chiefs were expected to collect from their people. Most leaders struggled with this impossible task, caught between angry villagers and demanding colonizers. Not Wangu. She embraced her role as tax collector with a ruthlessness that made grown men tremble. When people couldn't pay, she didn't just fine them or lecture them. She made them kneel, then she sat on their backs. Picture this. The most powerful woman in the region conducting official business while using human beings as furniture. Men who had never bowed to anyone now served as her living throne, their knees grinding into the dirt while she addressed meetings and made decisions that affected entire communities. The image was so shocking, so completely unprecedented, that it became her signature. People would whisper about the woman who literally sat on men's backs while ruling over them. She would imprison tax evaders in solitary confinement, intimidate anyone who dared question her authority, and maintain order through fear and spectacle. For 7 years, she ruled like this. 7 years of absolute power that no woman before her had ever wielded. Her own son attended the mission school, a privilege bought with the taxes she extracted from her terrified subjects. She even donated land for the Waitaga Church, a philanthropic gesture that showed she wasn't just a tyrant, but a complex leader navigating impossible circumstances. But power, especially the kind built on humiliation and fear, always comes with a price, and Wangu was about to pay it in the most spectacular way imaginable. June 2nd, 1909, a meeting that would be remembered for generations. The Kikuyu had gathered for an important ceremony, and at the center of it all was the kibata, a sacred warrior dance that had been performed by men for centuries. It was more than entertainment. It was ritual, tradition, the very essence of masculine power and spiritual connection. Women were absolutely forbidden from participating, not discouraged, not frowned upon, forbidden. But there was Chief Gakure, her lover, her gateway to power, dancing with abandon among the warriors. The man who had made her the most powerful woman in the region was now moving to ancient rhythms, his body expressing freedoms that had been denied to her gender since time immemorial. In that moment, everything changed. Some say she threw caution to the wind and stripped naked to join the dance, clutching Gakure as they moved together in forbidden ecstasy. Others whisper that jealous men deliberately cut the strings of her traditional skirt, causing it to fall away as she danced, exposing her body to the horrified crowd. The truth doesn't matter. What matters is this: Wangu wa Makeri, the woman who had broken every rule to gain power, broke the one rule that would destroy her completely. The crowd gasped. The dancers stopped. The world went silent. She had crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. The scandal sent shockwaves through the entire district. The woman who had sat on men's backs was now the woman who had danced naked in sacred ceremony. The leader who had commanded respect through fear was now the subject of whispers and shame. She was forced to resign immediately. Her replacement, Ikai Wagathimba, took over a position she had held for 7 unprecedented years. Wangu wa Makeri died in 1915, just 6 years after her spectacular fall from grace. But here's what makes this story truly remarkable. She's remembered not as a cautionary tale, but as a pioneer. A woman who, for 7 extraordinary years, wielded power that no woman before her had ever possessed. She sat on men's backs because she refused to be beneath them. She broke sacred taboos because she refused to be confined by them. She ruled with an iron fist because she knew that in a world designed to crush women, only iron could survive. Remember that image I started with? The woman sitting on a man's back while addressing a room full of terrified men. That woman was Wangu wa Makeri, and her story proves that sometimes, to change the world, you have to break it first. The most scandalous story in Kenyan history isn't about a woman who fell from grace. It's about a woman who dared to reach for it in the first place.